been able to figure out what is wrong with it. So we will attempt, I will use my teacher's voice, so I talk to the back of the room, and Bryan will attempt to do the same thing. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce him. I can't begin to fathom how many awards and how many races he has entered over the years. 2016, he was in the Canada's Cup on Hollandia, the 8-meter world champion, Cyber Cup winner 6 times, Venture 2 and Raven, 5 consecutive years, 2010 to 2014, and he was helmsman on these boats. 8-meter world championship moderns on Octavia, he was a tactician, and Gefion, a 2-time winner, and was helmsman on that. 8-meter North Americans, 4 times winner, Raven helmsman. 8-meter North America's Globe and Mail Trophy on Venture 2 helmsman. 2012, the Panerai Cup champion helmsman. 2008, Canada's Cup trials on Red Jacket. 1991 to 93, the Canadian Admirals Cup team on Amazing Grace, including the Fastnet, and he was watch captain and helmsman on that. 1971, 84, 89, 90, 91, Ontario World Achievement Awards. Canadian Onion Patch, I almost said Union there, Onion Patch team on Maya 5 and Amazing Grace, the first non-US team to win the series, and there he was watch captain and helmsman. 1991, the Jamaican race, first watch captain and helmsman. 1991, the Barthel Trophy. 1978, Canada's Cups trials on Via 6. Match racing. 1977, Pacific Challenge, tactician match racing. Is it working? No. He was in the SORC 6 times. He raced every major keelboat race on Lake Ontario multiple times. 3-time winner of the RCYC Champion of Champions. 3-time winner of the RCYC Fleet Captains Award. 9-time Albacore Club Champion. 1971 North American Albacore Champion as crew. 1971 Junior Canadian Albacore Champion. 3-time Canadian Albacore Champion as crew. 2016 North American 8-meter Champion. 2016 winner of the Canada's Cup. Multiple times winner of the Blake Van Winkle Freeman Cup, Boswell Trophy, Susan Hood, Donald B. Somerville, Lake Ontario 300, first in class by almost 2 hours, second overall, Lake Ontario International first. A huge miracle.
How bad he was as a junior club.
I forgot to mention there's a $5 charge for the lecture this afternoon.
Thanks. All right, Bryan is going to have a conversation with us this afternoon. There will be no pictures, but there are lots of memorabilia up here, and you're more than welcome to come and take a look at them afterwards. Please give Bryan a warm shellback.
Well, it's great to be here, and I probably don't need a microphone because I have a good set of lungs. My father having been a soft-spoken, gray-haired gentleman, to which Paul could attest. And I have a great story about in the days when when somebody would ask for boy room, if you didn't give it to them, you had to go the wrong side of the mark yourself. And we're in the Champion of Champions in Borrowed Sharks. And my dad says, when Paul asks for boy room, Bryan, there will be no boy room. We're both going the wrong side. So Paul says, boy room, Bill, boy room. And my dad goes, not today, Paul. And we both went the wrong side of the mark. And the owner's representative at the sort of little cocktail thing afterwards, he says, boy, the young guy did exactly what the old guy said. And I said, it's his father. So, And I mean, one of the great things about here is I get to sail, not as much as I'd like to, but often with my daughter Yolan and my son Billy, and Paul sails with his daughter Martha, and there are lots of other members here, the Giles family and the McLaughlin family, and they race with their mums and their dads and their kids and their whatever. And I think that that's pretty special that we get to do that. I can say it here, but I didn't say it when I've been giving a little talk at some other clubs, but for sure at this yacht club, the RCYC breeding program is working marvelously. and I can attest to that, because my father said there's two good ways to get crew. You can marry them or breed them. and he did both in a highly successful manner, for sure. Well, what I'm going to talk about a little bit, some of it's a little more recent because I'm a young guy compared to some of my predecessors, my ancestors, just to talk about sailing and racing on Lake Ontario. We're so lucky to be here. We don't have to contend with the salt. We do have to contend with the ice in the winter, but I think some of that pent-up demand makes it better for when we do get on the water, because we missed so many months with the cold. And also, I've raced a fair bit around the world, and we're so lucky here that in Toronto that we have, you know, two great sail lofts, and we have Fogue Marine, and we have Jenko, and we have Claco, who are people from Europe order metal mats and fittings made by them. And that's not to say that somebody in Australia or Europe doesn't have good fabricators, but we can get in the car. Steve Killing lives up the road, and Patterson Composites, and all these terrific firms that we have. And it doesn't matter whether you race a boat or you cruise a boat or you're fixing up some old boat, the fact that we can be to all these places in an hour, I was going to say a half an hour, but it's an hour now, or an hour and a half or two, and it's the same time zone, and it's Canadian dollars, and we're so spoiled. And we also have some unbelievably fantastic race committees around here, for sure, you know, at this club and the other clubs, you know, at Queen City and National and Port Credit. And that's just for like the Tuesday or the Wednesday night race or the weekend where all the different clubs come together. And so it's pretty neat, I think. And you know, so many of the Olympic athletes that we have are, you know, hail from sort of this neck of the woods. And I had often said how it was sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday, it was very hard to win a race because Steve Calder would be out, Ann Fogue would be out, and Eddie Bottrell would be out, and Terry McLaughlin would be out. And I mean, you could sail really pretty well and come third or fifth, you know, and that was just on the weekend race, you know. So it's terrific that we have all this in our own backyard. For instance, there's a photo up here of my grandfather racing in Chicago, and he crosses in front of one boat on port tack, ducks the other guy's stern, the other guy being on starboard tack, so he crossed one, ducks the other one, and tacks off on his hip and wins the Richardson Cup because the other guy couldn't then tack for the finish line. Well, then, I don't know, 80 or 100 years later, Dennis Connors makes this maneuver that he called the slam dunk. Well, I think Norman had done it about 80 years before. And it was all done here. Certainly in the past here, when I was a young boy growing up, we used to read in the Globe and Mail, which was thanks to a lot to Harry G. Kimber, but every Monday you could read who won the 14 race, who won the 8-meter race, who won the cruising race, whatever. It was much more of a sort of a big deal. locally than it is now. But you would see, even if you were on a different course, you could see how somebody had done on the Saturday. So it did get a lot more press, you know, certainly in days past. We've been great innovators here. The International 14 class, for instance, which I think was really, Paul, you could maybe correct me or not correct me on that, owes a lot to the Royal Canadian Yacht Club in Lake Ontario. And now, I mean, International 14s are all over the world, and they're sort of leading the way in many cases of sort of design and development without being too much out of control. A lot of boats now, a lot of modern boats seem to have a very short span and a rise and a little bit, and then, you know, they don't seem to have any legs years down the road. They come and go sort of like fast food. I look at how hard some of us have worked for our dream or whatever. I have a book here that we did for Hollandia about our quest for the Canada's Cup, and I only discovered it, I guess it was just before Christmas. There's a picture of Hollandia in the dock at Port Credit in Bristol Marine, and the boat right beside it is Quest, which of course is the boat my grandfather Norman had built in 1930-32 to try and win the Canada's Cup. And I had looked at this Hollandia book a bunch of times to help put it together, and then I finally looked at it. Boy, my family's been trying to do that for a long time, never successful. And finally, you know, sort of 80 years later, we were able to put it together, and somebody said, boy, we've been working on that for, you know, a few months, and I heard about it. Oh, actually, I've been working on it for like more than half a century, you know. So, you know, there's some sort of longevity and some history to some of those things. When the 6-meter class, which I never really knew particularly because I was quite young, my father used to always talk with great admiration about the time he spent in the 6-meter class. He sailed 6 meters in the Olympics in Helsinki, and when I was sailing in an 8-meter world in Helsinki, I was in the regatta tent and everything said Raven all over it. And he says, oh, you are from Raven, you are doing quite well. And I said, yes, we are, thank you very much. And he goes, well, you know, he says, in the Olympics in Helsinki, in the 6-meter class, there was a fellow named Gooderham, who was the same last name as the helmsman of Raven. And I said, well, I'm the helmsman of Raven, I'm Bryan Gooderham. He says, oh, well, there was a Gooderham in the Olympics. I said, yeah, that was my father. And I said, and this was his watch. And it was pretty neat. And my mother, when I told her when I got home, she was like about 2 feet off the ground because she'd been there, and she'd woken up the whole crew early the first day of the Olympics. She'd never been in the land of the midnight sun. So she goes around and wakes the whole crew up at 3 or 4 in the morning and thinks, my God, you guys are going to miss the first day of the Olympics. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And I think it was Roland McDonald goes, Joanne, it's a good thing you're the skipper. So, and it's just such, I mean, a great sport. I gave to King Harold a couple of years, or last year, after his birthday, a copy of a bunch of 6-meters racing in Long Island Sound. I know this is digressing from Lake Ontario, but they're all lined up. And on the back of them, my father had written who's King Olaf, Harold's father, and there's Beppe Croce and Louis Milvarez and all the guys of the time, and they're all lined up there. And so I've always felt pretty lucky that I could race against King Harold because his dad had raced against my dad. And I said to him, I said, what about your son? What's the crown? What does he do? Oh, he's into windsurfing. You know? He's not into that. He said, I said, but there's time yet. I said, yeah. He said, yes, there is. I said, well, that would be good because your son should race against my son someday. And it's just such a grand grand sport. You know, I know I'm sort of preaching to the converted here, but it is a great sport that we belong in. So I've talked about 6 meters. I've talked about 8 meters. I sailed a lot of albacores with my father, who started the class in this country, and we did that for a long time, and quite successfully. And people used to say to me, "Oh, you have to sail with your father? Does he make you do that?" "Oh, I love it." To which my mother would always say, "Well, the fact that you do pretty well sometimes helps." And I have a black and white picture of 60 or 80 albacores all on starboard tack at the start, all lined up. And there's one boat on port tack, with Bill, with his son, Bryan. And people I was always introduced as, "Oh, you're Bill's son," or "You're Bryan's boy," or "Bill Gooderham, your father." And when I got into my teens, some people said, "Well, doesn't that bother you, Bryan, to be Bill's boy?" And I said, "No, not at all, not at all. I'm quite proud of that." And then a couple of years later, my mom and dad had been to a Christmas party somewhere. My dad comes home and he says, "Well, Bryan, you finally made it." And I said, "Well, what do you mean, Dad?" He goes, "Well, today I was introduced as Bryan's father." I thought that was pretty cool. And we have such a wealth around here. Early on, when I was sailing some 8 meters and sailing Venture for Lauren Corley, and we go in a race and we wouldn't do very well. And if we hadn't done very well, I would go and try and hunt up, David Howard or Peter Pangman or somebody afterwards. And I guess the Star Wars movie had just come out, and people said, "Well, where's Bryan? He's not helping me sort of put everything away." And my bow guy would say, "Oh, you've gone up to see Yoda." I wonder what I should have done, perhaps, So, but it was terrific just to walk from like here to the stoplights, and here were guys who were just a wealth of knowledge, And when I was racing albacores a lot with my dad, but also on my own, Joanna Kidd was my crew, and we would often go to regattas, and she would be maybe only one or 2 or 3 at the most female sailors. And Joey Kidd was the best dinghy crew I ever had, by a long way. And I didn't know about the fragile male ego, and she was a year and a half older than me, so I still had 1 more year of junior sailing, and she couldn't crew with me. So I went through a couple of guys, and not so successfully, and we were at a regatta at the Royal St. Lawrence Yacht Club. And I said to this one fellow, I said, "Why can't you be tough like Joey?" Well, he just turned into a pile of goo and was useless for the rest of the regatta. "Why can't you be tough like Joey?" And then another time in the albacores, Joanna was crewing with me, and we were at a regatta in Lake Couchiching, I guess, and all the usual suspects were there. And my dad comes over with Rod Laidlaw in his little powerboat, and says, "Can't you, would you like a little bit of help, Brian, a little bit of coaching?" I said, "Oh, God, yeah." Because these 2 guys, and this was in the days when there was no weight limit on the wet sweaters and all this sort of thing. Joanna Kidd used to wear 40 pounds of wet sweaters from the waist up. And being a tall woman, a tall girl, it was very effective. But anyway, I said to my dad, I said, "We can't get those guys. We get to within 3 boat lengths, and we can't get past those guys." And my dad turns to me from the boat and he says, "Bryan, those guys aren't guys, they're girls." It was Karen McRae and Diane Grew. 2 of our better female sailors, and still are. And but I remember him saying, "Those guys aren't guys." And so that was a sort of an amusing thought. And then ultimately we ended up being successful because my dad sort of aimed me more or less in the right direction and everything. So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. And as I say, to sail around here against the Hendersons and the Fogues and the McLaughlins and the Vaudeville's and all the Howards and all these people just on our weekend regatta. A lot of people don't get that opportunity to do that. And if you keep your eyes and ears and your, as PJ Dillon used to say to me, open your mind, let stuff come in. And if you keep an open mind, then you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot. It's a great sport. We were very fortunate one time when Paul Elstrom and his wife were over, and my mom and dad and 2 Elstroms and myself, we were up at the farm for 3 days. I mean, how cool was that? That was pretty neat, I thought. Pretty neat. Water rats. We were, and a lot of Paul's friends, Bill Cox and others. Bob Grant, for instance, Overland Western, donated our dock. And it was an old flatbed trailer. And everybody kept their boots and rakes in the trunk because Maury Edwards was president of McCord Concrete. And so when they had to get rid of concrete on a terrible crummy day, 3 or 5 trucks would show up, the color would go out, and the boys would go down and spread the concrete. That's why it's 28 feet thick, some of it down there. And Bob Grant supplied one of our docks, and it was a flatbed, and this was the days before cell phones and everything. And my dad is there, I think Gordy Norton, maybe Paul Henderson, I'm not sure. And the driver said, well, where do you want me to drop this? And my dad said, oh, you want to back it into the lake as far as you can. But, I don't know if that's a very good idea, because I never get it out of there. He goes, oh, that's the deal. He said, oh, well, I better go and phone my dispatch. So he has to go to the Cherry Street Diner or something and phone. And then he comes back and he says, yeah, they said if you want it in the lake, we just put it in the lake. So he backed it in as far as he could and not get the highway tractor stuck, and unhooked it and left it. And I'm not even sure whether it's still there or not, but could be. Is it still there? Yeah. And that was our dock. And the wheelhouse from the Victoria, which is one of the boats that makes the breakwater at Ontario Place, and became the clubhouse. And it was pretty neat to go there. We would race most Saturdays because the urn kept the water warm and it would be steaming sometimes. And, my father would take me to school the odd time, and one time I dumped on a Wednesday afternoon, and my dad said, well, I can't take you home because you have some other times I would go to school to go sailing, and it won't be very good. So he took me back to school, I had to walk home. I was sick as a dog for about a week afterwards, and my dad would just look at me and sort of go, cough, cough, cough. And, but I love that. And again, getting back to some of the coverage, I mean, there's an article here about the water rats, but it used to often be in the newspapers on the Sunday morning about what these crazy guys get up to, and some of their children, Morty Norton had his daughter, or his son Chris with it sometimes, and then there were a few of us sort of younger types who were there as well with our dad. And I think our moms were always pretty happy when Dad would bring us home in one piece at the end of the day than going sailing in January or February in Lake Ontario. So, but it was a way to sort of keep up and be on the water, and I think we all loved it. Oh, and by the way, too, if anybody has any question or whatever, feel free to sort of jump in at any time. Water rats, Canada's Cup, Chris Meters. I'm looking very forward to this year. The Oriole is coming to Toronto from the Royal Canadian Navy. He's the longest serving ship from the Royal Canadian Navy, based out of Esquimalt. She's been to New Zealand, Australia, all over. It was my great-grandfather's. One of his guys, he had a bunch of boats called Oriole 3, Oriole 4, and donated it to the Navy. Peter Canyon was one of the skippers, the commanding officer for a while, and still he's here this year. And it's going to be an all or welcome sort of thing, no matter what club club we were from. And she's competed in the big Maui race and the Fisher race and all sorts of things. She has a mixed crew now, which back in the day originally she didn't, but now she does have a mixed crew.
So will she be in the RCYC?
She's going to be at the RCYC, and she's also going to be on the city side as well. I can't remember the date exactly. I think I wanted to say June, but I know Beverly here at the archives, and there will be more news coming about that. But I mean, there's a vote too that, a few times she's been about to go to the scrap heap, and a lot of the sort of the alumni, the past officers and crew and stuff have often chipped in what ultimately is a significant amount of money to help with keeping her going. And it's just a pretty neat program. I'm looking forward. She was in Montreal last year and I couldn't get down, but she's going to be here for, I'm not sure whether it's 2 weeks or 10 days, but a little while. It's not going to be just a drive-by and then sort of thing. So I would encourage everybody to go and see aboard her. And most welcoming.
How long is she going?
She is, ooh boy, without the bowsprit and all that, I think 80 something feet, but she has a bowsprit that's like here to the lower band sort of thing, and the boom hangs up to that more than 2 feet. And sure here, I should know this, but it's going to be editorial. It might say somewhere. How long she is, but she's no J24, that's for sure. That's for sure. A lot of what we have around here, I alluded to the Blackos and the Prussians and the Bristols and all that sort of stuff before. We are fortunate to have all those people, all those names, close at hand, because we can restore things around here, which in a lot of places you have to go a long way away. John Giles has done some amazing work up in Thornbury, Russ Benju in West Bristol. We can do it all, whether it's an ackroyd dinghy or whether it's a neat meter or something else in between. Shellbacks is a point, beautifully restored boat that was found in Panama as a wreck. I mean, just the high water mark inside was up to my waist, just full of oil and food and all sorts of stuff. And so we can do it. We can do it all right here. We don't have to go to some yard, I think it's Spain or Italy or the UK or something. We don't have to go to Maine. We don't have to go anywhere. We can do it all right here. And I'm immensely proud of what we can do in our own backyard, for sure. And both the trades that we have, but also too the people who sail these boats and to look after these boats. We do it all right here. I think it's marvelous. And we have the history. You find out about somebody's aunt or uncle or father or grandfather that did something that was pretty amazing back in the day, and how that spawned sort of what we're doing now. So it's all pretty excellent.
Over here, your favorite class?
Oh, somebody asked me that a few weeks ago. I had a favorite class. Yeah, favorite class. I mean, I love the 8 meters, obviously. I mean, the class has been very good to me, for sure. sure. As the guy said in France one year at the presentation, and I didn't make this up, he said it, and I didn't even know it was coming. He said, well, Raven was lucky they had something that no other boat had, and that was the winningest 8-meter skipper in the world of all time. And so the class has been good to me. I think I'm actually more of a sort of heavy displacement guy. I mean, that's why I love Red Jacket. You know, Red Jacket is indicated to say, well, sort of any year, you know, it's skinny and low to the water and fractionally great. It'll be pretty hard to leave that boat, out of the mix. And as some of my crew like to say when we're out sailing in some more modern boats and stuff, when we're fortunate enough to do really well, we said, oh, we set yacht design back over 50 years today. George Cuthbert said, you used to love that. They're falling on Monday. How did the weekend go, Brian? Well, we did pretty well, you know. And what do you do? Oh, we're the swimming boat for the Bar 40 crew, you know. And they check off all our best guys and best gals. So, yeah, probably sort of I guess the 8 meters would be the favorite. You know, I know at the upper level they're sort of red bottom money gobblers, but they are pretty tactical boats to sail. That's what I like. I never really got to sail a starboat more than 3 or 4 times, but Hans boat tried to say, oh, you should get into that, Brian. And or your son, he shouldn't sail at 49, he should sail a starboat. I'll lend you one, you know. I wished I had spent some more time with those boats, because almost everybody who's done the Whitbread or the Volvo Ocean Race or something like that, or a lot of guys sail the Olympics, they sail either 6 meters, a lot of 6 meters, Blackhaller, Dennis Connors, but all sorts of other fellows, Helen Peterson, and have all been leader boat sailors in the past. So I think they will teach you to think ahead and to be, well, if Valerie does this, then we'll have to do that. If he doesn't do this, we'll have to do that. And they'll be careful because everything's right out of my corner of my eye. And so they do teach you to sort of heavier displaced boats to think ahead. And when you put your head in the line's mouth, you have to make sure there's enough time to get it out. Whereas with some sports boats, that's maybe not quite the case. So, I mean, my kids know that it's so old-fashioned. As Billy said to me again before the trial, he said, Dad, how long are you going to use that old age and treachery will outdo youth and agility? And I said, well, as long as I can, Billy. He goes, it's working pretty well so far, Dad.
Brian, we're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I can speak up a little bit. I have good lungs now. I don't know.
Repeat that one for what you just said about old age.
Oh, yeah. Before the trials, my son had said to me, Dad, how long are you going to use that old age and treachery will outdo youth and agility? And I said, well, Billy, as long as I can. And he said, working pretty well so far, Dad. So that's true. That's true. There are so many things that aren't new that in our sport that just have a new twist a little bit, or a refined piece of equipment that lets you do things that we might not have been able to do 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe. So things do move on. And I guess the good thing that I see is when I look at some of the development in the upper levels, I just always hope that some of what's up there now filters down to the Tuesday, Wednesday night race. And I think in some measure it does. I mean, we have the spar craft shackle and the shotgun end in the pole and the tip pole jibe. All that stuff was all invented in the American stuff.
Brian, I just wonder when we're gonna see foils on an 8-meter.
Well, they're allowed to have only 2 movable appendages. There have been some 6 meters built with a bulbous bow and a canard on the front. I don't know, it might be a while before that happens. That's a lot of lead to lift
It's a
up.
lot of.
That's a lot of lead to lift up in the air, and, you know, yeah, that could be a while.
There's no end of possibility.
You'd need more than this many pencils to draw that.
Tell the story of the pencils.
Oh, this is a recent gift to me just an hour and a bit ago from Skipper Al Ray. And because a number of years ago after my father had passed away, I had mentioned that I would find these little tuna fish tins or something with little tiny pencils, probably even way shorter than that. But today Al comes up and gives me these 3 little short pencils, and I know when I show these to my sister that she'll say, "Oh, did you find some of Daddy's pencils?" With the little nub on it, and so I will do that. Please feel free to, take a look at some of the books here. There are terrific articles about 6 meters and 8 meters and then club annals and things like that. And so please feel free to take a peek at them after lunch or during lunch, or take it back to your table. I'd like to take them all home with me, please. And
Brian, do you have a race, a particular race that was particularly memorable? 1 or 2?
a couple, I guess. One was when we got to Bermuda on Mia 5, I guess. I was the youngest guy on the boat. I was 19. The next closest guy in age was about 30. And I thought that every sail change, it was, get Gooderham up and tell him to bring the number 3. Get Bryan up and tell him to bring the whatever. And I remember doing the last sail change. You could almost see Bermuda, but I went in my shoes and my underpants, and I just was too exhausted to get anything else up. And boy, did it ever feel good when it stopped. So that was pretty memorable. And we had also, too, we had gone up some waves. It was very, very rough, that race, that year. And you go up these waves like this, and you think, I hope that the boat doesn't go like that. Or then when you go down the wave, you thought, oh, when it gets to the bottom, I hope it remembers to sort of go like this. And then the bottom of the wave, the bottom of the trough, it'd be only going 15, 18, 20 knots. But at the top, it was going like 45 or 50. So you'd come up in this boat, it would be like this, and then whack, and you go down the next, and it was just, thank God for guys like Gordon Norton and people like that who were there to help look after the young Gooderham, or I might not have survived it. But I do remember that, and the 1 8-meter world in the Sierra Cup. I remember, or no, it was on Octavia, and on Andre Calla was with us, and I remember saying, well, if the jib falls down now, we'll still win. And then, as we got a little bit closer, well, if the jib and the main falls down, we'll still win. And then when we were about 3/4 of a boat length away or whatever, even if the whole mast, the whole shebang falls over the side, we're still going to win. And it was just such a great sense of relief when we did cross the finish line, and all the horns and everybody honks went off. You would have thought we just won the America's Cup. And we were sailing on a boat, Octavia, which was the first wing-keeled meter boat, first wing-keeled boat built since Australia too had just won the America's Cup the fall before. So there was much interest in that, and we had actually had 2 designs, one with a conventional keel and one with the wing keel. With the wing keel, and again built in Canada. The hull was built by Ben Jesperson in BC, but we finished the boat at Bristol. It was called Harbor Marine then, and the keel was made by Mars Metals in Burlington, and the spar was made by Clacko, and it was all Canadian, all Canadian. You didn't have to go anywhere to get anything made, you know. So that was a pretty memorable one with that. But a lot of races when it's been really, really rough and awful, boy, does it ever feel good to stop. You know, it's fantastic to stop. Fantastic to stop. So, anyway, I don't know how much longer I'm supposed to sort of go on.
Keep going.
Yeah. I'm happy to do whatever you want. I hope it's not, I don't mean it to be sort of self-ingratiating, but I've been on a lot of these races and been fortunate enough to be successful quite a bit, slightly more than my share, but in the immortal words of Paul Phelan, he said, well, you know, you have to encourage people once in a while. He says, and a little bit of humble pie is a good thing, but just don't make a steady diet of it.
What was your worst race? I don't mean necessarily by losing
Yeah.
it, but
Well, I've done a bunch of races where the rudder is broken in the ocean or the mast has fallen down, and the owner looks at me like, well, what do we do now, Brian? You know, I said, well, we can't pull over to the side of the road and wait for the tow truck. You know, we have to get in. You know, so we would, under some sort of jury rig or with great difficulty, you know, get to the Bahamas or get back to Florida, depending which way we were going. So those were never good. And usually it was somewhere in the middle of the series, so you know there would be a lot of long nights of, you know, flying from Nassau back to Florida to build a new rudder in one day and get 6 sails repaired and a bunch of new rigging done, and you had to get back that night and put it all in the boat the next morning and go racing. And I'm not quite sure that I could do that now, but back then that was sort of the modus operandi. You know, there was you had to do that. I mean, we had, for instance, a pretty big collision with Hollandia against Lafayette in the Canada's Cup trials, and the fellows who were part of the team, they worked all night and they did a fantastic job. And to repair the boat so that we could go racing again the next day. And I can remember Erwin, our team manager, comes up to me and says, Brian, go home and have a nice sleep. And I said, that's easy for you to say. He said, well, I know you won't sleep, but go home and get it out of the way. You know, so you know, these guys know what they're doing. He stopped short of saying they know more about what they're doing than you do. So try not to whack it up again the next day. And so that was a bit disappointing, I guess, that had happened. And because unlike some people who view Code Flag B in the protest room as part of their repertoire, I do practically everything I can to stay out of the rubber room. And because I would say to the Lynn Beals and the Terrence Brownriggs and the Captain Tunas and all these guys, I'd like to meet you at the cocktail reception, not sitting across the table with you saying, I'm so-and-so and such, is there a problem with that now, you know, what happened, sort of type of thing. So I like to try and stay out of that, if at all possible, but every once in a while it doesn't quite work out that way.
How big was your team you put together for the Canada's Cup?
Oh boy, there's probably 25 people at least.
Repeat the question.
Oh, how big was the team for the Canada's Cup? And I said, at least 25 people. And there's pictures and it's all, you would find this book pretty interesting. That's a sort of our history, and there's pictures of all the people in there and what they all did. And it's a little bit like a race car. You know, they say, oh, well, so-and-so is the driver. And you go, yeah, but there's a whole pit crew, and then the mechanical crew, and there's a guy that drives a transport truck, and they got, I mean, and just even feeding this mob, and keeping the rubber boats gassed up and working, and when were they getting an oil change and this and that, so that when we needed them, they were ready to go right away in any kind of condition. Any kind of condition that they were ready to go. So a lot of people behind the scenes. I mean, we were most fortunate with our campaign to have a lot of people support us too financially, which was terrific as well, because there's no show if there's no dough. It's sort of that, it's that simple. And the crew that I had were just unbelievably fantastic. And they had to be, because we came together with very, very much at the last moment, you know. And a lot of us some of us had never sailed together before. We sailed against each other. Like in the case of a guy like Al McGarry, I sailed against him lots of times. But other than the odd Tuesday night or something, he'd never sailed with me. And there were a couple of guys I had literally never sailed with until the first 3 or 4 times we went out, and then it was the first set of trials. What do you think we should do? I don't know. Try that. Well, that was a good idea, or boy, that didn't work out very well. Don't want to do that again. So, great.
Is there a race you still look forward to winning?
Well, I like to win them all. If I could. But the other people on the water, they have a different plan, and it's not that I'm ahead of them. I had gotten pretty close once to doing the I guess it was the last year. Was it the last year the Wick Red, or maybe, no, it was the first year of the Volvo thing. I got down with a team being pretty close to doing that. I thought I would like to do that. I have no desire to do the single-handed stuff like my dear friend Jerry Roos, who's not with us anymore, because I figure misery loves company. So that would be one, maybe, but I'm probably a little long in the tooth now for doing that. That would be something that maybe my son would do. I think he'd like to. And it's changed a lot, too, the track the world race, the complexity of it, and that sort of thing. But that would be one, maybe. But to answer your question, no burning desire for anything. I get asked all the time, well, what about the next Canada Cup? And I go, well, I'll wait and see about that. And somebody said, yeah, but you're very good at lying in the weeds, Brian. I said, you know, don't want to show your hand too soon. Was that a question?
Yeah, it was about the next Canada's Cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
You answered it.
Well, you know, I think one of the things it does is it's a new modern boat that we've tagged up with the New York Yacht Club on. It's a production boat, and when people say, oh, it only costs $250,000, stuff like that, in more words than Norm Walsh, you know, you sign a check and you fill in the amount in October. It's not $250,000, it's $500,000 plus anyway. But there's no, to me, one of the things that appeals marginally to that, there's no design element, there's no build element, there's no sort of sale inventory development, because you pay your money and they give you the keys and you know, good luck. And I've always liked, I mean, we've had some boats that are good, some boats that are bad. An example would be when we did Mary Thought Mirage. When the wind blew, the boat was they were both competitive boats. When it was light, Dynamite had it. When they had the Canada's Cup in the Morse 30s in Detroit, depending on what the wind strength was, one boat was way more favored. I mean, we had a terrible time with Hollandia, because when she was first built, for instance, her rudder was 15–18% bigger. Well, because they were the Dutch wanting just to race as a fleet, they made the rudder smaller because they wanted just straight line speed. Well, in the pre-start and stuff in a match race, boy, if I were going to sail that boat again, the first thing I do is put the rudder back to the size that it was before. My tactician said to Mike Wolf one time, I thought Bryan could steer pretty well. You know, he's jerking, he's all over the map. What's going on? Anyway, I heard this out of the corner of my ear one day. And so on the way in, I said, Peter, why don't you steer the boat in? So he sits down there, takes over the helm, and after about, I don't know, 12 or 15 minutes, he goes, this is goddamn awful. How do you make this thing go straight? I rest my case, Peter, you know. And it only took 12 or 15 minutes, you know. I said, oh, look at that. There's a snake following us in the water. So, you know, but that's what makes it a challenge. I mean, people, you were talking about, you know, my favorite boat. And people say, oh, Bryan, you've been able to sail some very sweet boats. I got to steer Intrepid for 2 weeks. And, you know, boats like Red Jacket or Hollandia. And they're actually terrible boats to sail. They're very hard to sail. And I liken it to, if you talk to a race car driver, if he says that he almost feels like he's going to break out in the corner or not make the turn, then he might be on the podium. He's got a very fast car and it's very hooked up. And I think the same thing with a sailboat. If it's too easy to steer, and you can change that with a balance on the rudder or whatever. If it's too easy to steer, it's probably not quite as fast as she could be. And whereas if it's a little bit difficult, then you can get really hooked up and go really fast. Now, at the end of the day, your arms ache, your back aches, everything aches, but you have a better chance of maybe being somewhere near the top of the heap. You know, that's my sort of read of your thing.
Bryan, how does athleticism fit into the high-end racing?
All the girls and boys that do that are in absolutely phenomenal good shape. The fellows who sailed with me, boy, I'd go into a brawl with them anywhere. You know, I mean, they're fantastic, and I think all sports, you know, sailing is our example, but all sort of near the tip of the spear. Everybody's in fantastic physical shape, and also in the case of sailing, whether it's especially if it's like a round the world race or a long distance race, but even a shorter race where like in the 29er class, you know, they do multiple races in a day, but the race isn't a minute and 30 seconds, you know, so you have to have some sort of stamina to do that. I know one of the things that they liked in the American Cup, they would sometimes recruit paddlers, rowers to crank winches because they had terrific upper body strength. They were prone not to get seasick, and which my dad did not get seasick terribly. And at short spurts of high output of energy. And I made a comment one time years ago, I guess in the days of Octavia, in a newspaper. I said, this is not sort of white pants and gin and tonics, you know, because people said, oh, well, they're not in very good shape and they drink too much, you know. I said, well, you come sailing with us for a day and see how you feel at the end of the day, you know. And
Do you see in in today's racing sports psychologists being involved with sailors?
yeah, they are, and quite a few of the top ones do have sport psychologists. I've had several people offer me that service, and I've been told that I'm too intense. And now my father, as I say, was a soft-spoken, gray-haired gentleman, but I've been called too intense, and not, you know, realizing the pressure. I said to my son one day, I said, do you ever feel when you race, you know, pressure to do better, to be better, or whatever? He goes, well, every day then you have the same last name as you do. and I certainly felt it from my dad. My dad felt it from Norman. And so I think there is a place for sports psychologists in this. It's just,
As long as they're not near you.
it's good. But it's a clog, in the last Canada's Cup, I graciously declined. This is a guy, and he helps the women's, the Canadian girls hockey team, and all sorts of rowers and other people. And I met with him once, and I said, well, can we have a beer? You know? And there is a place for it, but I think you have to want to have, you know, that sort of help.
The reason I asked the question is because on the CBC this morning, they were saying that the mind is the next step to increasing the records.
Yes,
A number of records, and you know, you can get the body doing what it needs to do, but if your mind impedes that, then you're not going to move forward.
Well, I have a couple of little sayings, some from my dad and some from other people. One is that the luck is a meeting of preparation and opportunity, which I believe in that for sure. Another one that pertains to sailing is hike first, hike harder, hike longer. You know, I think those are both pretty good things. And there's a few others that are just slipping in my mind right now. But the hike first, hike harder, hike longer. And at One World, King Harold's crew, we were in Germany, and all the boys on Ravens hike sort of old-fashioned starboats with one leg is down the waterline, and they're all low. So it keeps the weight lower, it keeps the windage lower. I can see better. Does it hurt more? Yeah, you've got that boat coming right down your chest here. And is it effective? Yes. And one of the Norwegian guys said to me, you know, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have to hike like that. Because as the week went on, more and more people started to do that, you know. So, you know, and the psychology thing is, you know, you have to be, to me, and I'm sure if you spoke to like an aerial skier or ski jumper, you know, oh boy, you have to be a champion. To me, you have to be a champion in your mind before you can be a champion on the water. You have to want it. And that doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen. But if you're not a champion in your own mind, you'll never be a champion in the car, on the horse, coming off the ramp, going through the gates. You know, that's just, but it's a very important cog in the wheel, I believe anyway. Yes, Al.
I sail 14s along with other people here, and anytime I was trying to go by your dad, he started yelling at me, and I wasn't sure whether he was saying the right thing or the wrong thing, so I abdicated to his better wishes.
Yeah.
But
Tim Barber, too.
yeah, but more important, your dad worked with me at Ontario Sailing Association as technical director, and we got along so well, and he was a different person, and I found him most enjoyable to work with, and he was also very generous. He gave his albacore to my two sons so they could sail in the Ontario Games and in Kitchener. So that's just a little off.
Ron, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask if anybody here remembers a boat called Sketcher 2 that was part of the RCYC. Because I was told it was donated to the Toronto Boat Museum by a member of the RCYC. Sketcher 2, it was built by Alexander Graham Bell in 1912, commissioned by Casey Baldwin.
I can't say that I do. You know who ran that question probably would be Rob Madden. Rob Madden.
Was she here?
Yeah, I know. I didn't think all about that stuff.
I can give you his contact information if you
Yeah,
want.
Rob Mazza with the,
unless I've been given the wrong information, maybe it wasn't QC.
Yeah.
I see what I see.
Brian,